Tami, it's lovely to see you. How are you today?
I'm great. It's so lovely to be here with you today. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Yeah, me too. And it's fantastic because, of course, we're talking about international speaking and international speaker bureaus. And it's a topic that we both love because obviously both of us have a background in bureau world. And you're still in bureau world, of course. So before we start, tell us a little bit more about your business.
Sure, thank you. Yeah. So my name's Tami Adams, and I am the founder of TA Speakers Management. So TA Speakers Management came about as a product of the pandemic. I'm one of the 50% of people that lost their job within the events and meeting and speaking industry. I mean, speakers saw everything go in the matter of days and probably had a million heart attacks like I did when it started to happen, except I was on the other end dealing with it all. So that was fun. But yes, unfortunately, product of just the impacts on the industry, and so started TA Speakers Management about 2 years ago. Figured I had enough experience, enough background, and so really what I do there is I am a bit of a combination. So I have a management company where I work very boutiquely with a few speakers at the professional level, and I help manage their day to day as well as get them engagements, help them with their branding, all that fun stuff. And then I have the coaching piece as well, where I coach new upcoming speakers that want to be in this industry, or I'll consult with current speakers who are already and they just need somebody to look over their materials and listen to their speeches and do all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's been great. It's fun owning your own business, and also the toughest thing that's you'll ever do. I'm sure many on the line can agree, because speakers run their own businesses of themselves. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And tell me, because obviously you started probably at one of the worst times to start a new business, and you're succeeding, which is wonderful. What does the industry look like currently in Canada and North America?
So it's a very broad answer, but to give kind of like an overview of what it looks like right now. So it's similar but different. So Canada right now overall there's a mix of virtual, in-person, and hybrid events. We are starting to see in-person come back, which is really exciting, more so in the US than Canada. The US is a lot more open, so they have a lot of big events going on that are all in person now, no masks, all that stuff. Canada is a little different. We are a little bit slower at coming back, a little bit more nervous. So I'm seeing a lot of uh, company events, like team building, reconnection type of events, bringing people back together in person. But then I'm also seeing a lot of associations being cautious to do these big events, so they're doing either a hybrid model, where they'll have the speaker present somewhere and then they have the audience virtual, or they're doing like a few in person, so true hybrid, where it's like a few in person, the rest virtually, the speakers in person. So it's a bit of a mix, I would say. One really exciting thing that I'm seeing now is a pickup in diverse and female keynote speakers coming forward to speak. So yeah, so that's really exciting, because when I started my business, I wanted to not solely focus, but have a special focus on bringing more diverse and female voices to the stage. And what's really exciting is that's what's the demand now, right? So basically, we're having all these amazing executives that have reevaluated their lives, or entrepreneurs that are like, speaking's the next thing for me, So and people stepping forward, and it's great because it's matching what's going on in the world with diversity and inclusion. And love the guys, but the days of the full white male rosters on speaking engagements are over. Like, if people, you don't see that anymore, and if you do, people are like, oh really? So it's a very definitely that creates a little bit more of a challenge for the men out there that are speaking, especially if they tend to be white. So they got to work a little bit harder to stand out, I would say, but it's good for the inclusion and diversity side of things. And then in terms of lengths, I would say, if we're looking at the industry in terms of like what people are requesting, and later we'll talk a little bit more about topics, but In terms of the length, I'm seeing, anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes online, and anywhere from, 30 minutes to an hour and a half. What I'm seeing a lot of now too is a lot of extra added on value adds beyond the keynote itself. So yeah, so you're nodding, Maria. So I'm guessing that you're seeing that as well, where it's not just the 1 hour anymore. And really a pro speaker doesn't, it's not just 1 hour you're paying for. But now I'm seeing, like, because people learn by doing, what I'm finding is like, and also this build on reconnecting right now, I'm seeing a lot of like, okay, can you do a keynote and an interactive breakout to follow, or an activity or something, right? So that's a little bit about what I'm seeing in Canada and the US. Maria, I don't know if you wanted to shed light on the UK, but yeah.
That was fantastic. Thank you for that. That was really comprehensive. I really appreciate that. So it's interesting because a lot of what you're saying, we were seeing actually before the pandemic, in terms of clients wanting more than just a speech and wanting to really embed that learning and create change. So not just to inspire and motivate for that moment, or give them people practical tips for that moment, but actually how does it keep going? So it is really important. And throughout the pandemic, of course, speakers have had to adapt and learn how to deliver differently. And many of the trainers actually did better than the keynote speakers, because they were used to having to, to create content to get people engaged and interact. And so we've all been developing our skills and learning, and we've all been learning how to speak and talk into this little tiny, 2-inch by 2-inch box, and to look at the right,
and to look at the camera.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I know. It's
I know. Even now I'm like, okay, look up, Tami, look up.
yeah. So I mean, I cheat. I put my camera where you are, so that makes it a lot easier for me. Yeah. Well, so all of that, and I think what we're seeing, we certainly in the UK and parts of Europe, it's not the same all the way across Europe,
right?
But certainly in the UK's sort of opened up and said, we've had enough. We want to go for it, and it's been reflected clearly in the higher rates of infection. But we're still going forward by the looks of things, and certainly our economy needs that. So we're seeing much more in person. The virtual is still there, definitely. I don't think virtual is ever going to go away. No. And there is some element of hybrid. And I don't know what you're seeing in terms of hybrid. I'd love to have your take on it. But many clients find that hybrid is really hard to manage, and many speakers are finding it hard to manage. I don't know if you've seen that too.
Oh my God. Yeah. You're planning 2 events in one, basically, is what you're doing. Event planning was already hard. I mean, I'm a planner by trade as well, so I can relate to that side of things. And, I've planned my share of virtual and in-person events. And yeah, 100%. Like I find clients right now are either leaning more towards virtual or in-person. So there is hybrid out there, but it's not, it's very expensive, because you have and we try it. So like, for example, the meetings industry got back together, and we tried a hybrid global meetings industry day. And so that's when all the people across the industry get together, and we tried that out to see how it would work. We had 6 people join us actually, and only 3 show up online, and everybody else was in person. So it was interesting. That taught us, like, hey, in person is really what people want. And I don't think they want that virtual option, or they want just virtual. So it's like, either you provide a just virtual experience, or you provide a just in person. So it's really dependent though, because if you're a large organization, then, association, then it makes sense for you to spend the money, because you have people coming from all over, right? So, and that they're not going to necessarily be able to come in person. So I think you really have to justify the dollars as a planner. And as a speaker, heck yeah, it's harder, because you have to engage 2 audiences now to do it right. You know what I mean? So you got to make sure you're like, hey guys, online, or if you're getting anybody to do anything, you got to pull them in. So, and then MCs is a whole other ball game, because, then you got to have kind of 2 MCs feeding each other information and working together. So hybrid is certainly, I'm saying, not, I really predict that smaller groups will not use hybrid. They'll go either. And then bigger groups will pay for the hybrid, because it makes sense.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think hybrid is like running a live TV show, really, isn't it? And that you are having to think about the TV audience and the live audience in studio. And that's a skill in itself. And I suspect there'll be a lot of mistakes made and a lot of learning. And as you said, it's expensive. So as a speaker, with regards to fees, what are you seeing? Are you seeing a difference between in-person fees, virtual fees, and are people charging more to do hybrid, or are they charging the in-person rate, do you think?
So that's really interesting. So because I haven't had too many hybrid events, I actually can't answer that. Although I feel like it would leave a bad taste in people's mouths to do that. So I feel like I wouldn't advise it. But okay. So basically at the beginning of the pandemic, it was a free for all. We knew that. Like it was like, people didn't care what equipment you had. They didn't care any of that. And they expected a much lower fee for virtual. That's how it was. It was like, oh, great, virtual. Now you don't got to travel. Now you're going to do all these things. You're just talking head. Okay, this is cheaper. That was at the beginning. Plus speakers were freaking out because all their business was gone. So they would take anything. They're like, I'll do it. So that was kind of the first year for sure. And then it started to get a little better. Virtual fees started to get closer to in-person fees. And now what I'm finding is they're more or less the same. The speakers will charge the same for virtual and in person, but obviously there's the travel for the in person, so there's the incentive there. But some will also be a little flexible for virtual because they don't have to leave. So it's like they ask for it and then they they might be a little bit more flexible. And it really depends on the speaker. Some speakers love traveling, right? Like they want to travel all over. And so they want to incentivize that. Some people, my speaker, Sarah, she does not. She's like, I'm from Niagara. I have 2 teenagers. Like I want to be home, and I like my peaceful studio that I have set up in my barn at home in Niagara. So it's like, it really depends where they are, what they want, and then how do you incentivize that? But fee wise, like we're talking numbers. So Canada, in terms of, I don't think the fees have changed unless it's that virtual in-person thing. So I'm seeing, 5,000 to 20,000 in Canada, 5,000 to 40,000 in the US. So it really, really depends on that. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. And you summed it up perfectly, because it's really very much what is the speaker's objective with their speaking? Are they a speaker who loves virtual? There's so many of them who hate virtual, and therefore they're going to charge, some are going to charge more for virtual, because it actually is really hard work, because you're not getting anything back a lot of the time. And others love it. So yeah, it does. So which means, I mean, in the old days, pre-pandemic, pre-virtual, we used to, in our bureau, and I'm sure you did too, we had a formula, if it's a local, it's that fee. If it's if it was outside of the UK and Europe, it was this, you multiplied by that. If it was in the US, you multiplied by that, etc. And if it was virtual, if it was going to happen, it was. But now it's like, well, actually, I don't want to do virtual, therefore I'm going to charge a lot. Anyway, it's fascinating. So there is no black and white answer, is there? In reality, it's all 50 shades of grey is what it is.
It is 50. It really is all over. Like it's really, like you said, dependent on the objective of what the speaker wants for their career and what's important to them. Just like people working, no different, right? Like, some people chose to work from home. Some people said, no, I want to make the commute. Not many, I'm sure, but it's reflective of that for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Interesting. It's nice that you can control these things by your pricing. I like that. So yes. It'd be interesting to know from you, because obviously that many people who will be listening, many speakers are really keen to work in the US and in Canada. It's a market that everybody wants to get into and get known in. Let's see if it's similar to over here. What would you say it takes today to succeed in Canada and North America?
So my prediction is it's going to be the same answers. That is my prediction, because we are all human at the end of the day. And so that is my prediction. So it'll be interesting to see. But I would say, well, in terms of, because we were talking about fees and stuff, right? So what I really think makes a speaker stand out is going back to that beyond the keynote. So I think having a lot of thought leadership and online presence, video, obviously the standards, video proof, ability to tailor and customize, but really being able to provide those extra value adds. So example, one of my speakers, like we just upped her fee. And so we're like nervous because it's always scary when you raise your fees, right? And she works a lot in the not-for-profit sector. But instead of reducing her fees, what we do is they need more to justify that amount. So we give them more. So what they get is they'll get micro-learning courses, or they'll get, resources that we can give away that aren't going to cost us very much, or extra planning calls. Like that's literally from the speaker's brain on a call. Sure, it's an hour of their time, but it's like not a big priced thing to give away. So we'll do things like that. We'll offer like beyond that keynote. So we'll say, well, you can book her for the keynote, but what if she does a really fun, networking, connecting activity after, and people are loving it? Or what if she does a breakout? There's the whole, like, if you think about it, like say you have a conference and you're going to do the keynote, you might as well offer the breakout for like another 2,000 or something, because they likely aren't going to find a breakout speaker for that much unless they're all free. So it's like you're kind of giving that incentive. So I think like definitely thought leadership, really having that online presence. I mean, you're a speaker, so you need to have a presence online. It is a non-negotiable in my mind. And just really establishing yourself as that thought leader. In terms of human skills, I would say authenticity, vulnerability, 100%. Like that is a huge, what we're seeing now, if you think about it, speakers, businesses follow what's going on in the world, right? Because they're solving problems for people. So, there has been this more people first focus. And so, the more authentic and the more vulnerable you can be about your own experiences and about data and stories that you tell, the more people are going to connect with you. And I think it's always been that way, but I think it's just been escalated even more so now. So I would say in terms of like, personality and things like that, definitely, I can get more into my framework in a bit, but having education, engagement, and entertainment built in throughout your entire talk, I think is really key. So those are just some of the things that I would say would take, but definitely that additional value adds, I think is the goal that people are going to have. Like some speakers are even can offer executive coaching in addition to, what they offer. Right. So just being more than just that keynote, I think.
Fantastic. Completely agree with everything you just said. And it's interesting because every speaker that had, I call it a portfolio of services, a portfolio of different ways of offering your expertise to clients. And I think every speaker should have that. And many who tripped up in the pandemic, they tripped up because they were simply keynote speakers. And when there isn't a keynote spot because there isn't a conference, then your business collapses. However, if you're an expert who delivers your expertise, and one of the ways you do it is through speaking, but then you can do it in other different ways. And I think you're absolutely right that it's certainly gone more from information and entertainment, which is part of it, to implementation. We want the audience to move from A to B. And we want to know what that movement is. We want to understand what it is. Totally agree with you. And certainly we saw before the pandemic, and I'm seeing it more and more now, that expectation that the speaker works in partnership with the event organizer, the meeting planner, the client. You're cheering this on because you are a former meeting professional. So you were running events, so you get this, you absolutely get this. But instead of saying, okay, I'm just coming to speak, you actually share it on. So you do need that social media presence. And I know so many of the speakers resist it, and so many speakers resist having a good website, but it's vital these days. People need to check you out, and they need to feel they know you before they even invite you. Yeah. In the old days, you're too young to remember the old days, but in the old days, 25 years ago when I started, clients wanted to go and see speakers speak in the flesh, in person.
Yes.
And it was possible to do that in those days. Now they need to feel that they know you before they book you. And what was the final thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, and then the final thing, which we haven't said, which is absolutely vital. You said very accurately, businesses are constantly changing to solve the problems that are going on currently. Speakers have to do the same. You have to be relevant to what is going on now. You've got to be relevant to the language of the client. In fact, you've got to be ahead of it. Really,
you have to be ahead of it. Oh yeah, 100%.
And many speakers are not. I've still got speakers coming to me saying, I want to talk about resilience. I'm sorry, you've missed that boat.
Do not use that word.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's
Thank
a
you.
swear word in the events industry and in the healthcare industry for sure. They no longer want to be told to be resilient. So the word that I use is gritty because I really like it. It's like you're gritty, you know, you're getting in there in the trenches. That's what I think grit means. So it's like, and you're battling at everything that comes your way. Like, to me, that's grit. So that's often the word I use. Actually, okay. So much gold there, Maria. So much to go off of, and I'll try to remember everything you said to go off of.
It's right. You can have the recording. Don't worry.
Because it's so good. So yes, that collaboration with the planner, that is what we're encouraging too. Because we're saying, look, bring your speaker in earlier, you know, because then you can plan the whole event around them and they can plan around you. So it's like this whole experience versus, can you fit this slot in my schedule, you know, on my list. And then also that whole the collaboration piece. And I'm trying to remember the other piece. Yeah, I knew I was going to forget.
Well, I think it was the relevancy in being ahead of the curve, keeping
ahead of the curve. Yes. So examples are like, and I use Sarah a lot, Sarah McVannell, but she's a great example as a speaker that really kicked butt and made herself relevant. She is the second that she heard about COVID, she actually designed a virtual recognition in the virtual world keynote. So that was out before like everything kind of hit the fan and went crazy, right? And then now we even switch it up. We'll say the hybrid space now, because now it's a hybrid world. So we've actually changed it now to that, right? So sometimes it's just those little words you need to change and slight focuses. She created a whole recognition for the Great Resignation, because the Great Resignation is a huge topic that's going to be going on for a number of years across the entire world. So if you can speak anything about that, you're doing well for the next little while. But then eventually that will end. It will be like, okay, it's not as demanding, so we'll need to pivot again and figure out what's the next big message that she can share based on the time. So it's like always about adjusting, being relevant, being ahead of the curve, doing your research, reading, collecting data, all of that.
Fantastic. You've touched on some of the topics that you're predicting. And so you talked about the Great Resignation. You've talked about dropping the topic of resilience and coming up with something else, or having a different view on it, because I'm sick of trying to be resilient as well. It's exhausting. You talked about the fact that to keep an eye on what's happening so that you're ahead of it. Are there any other topics that you're seeing or predicting currently in your market?
Yeah, for sure. So, we talked about grit. We talked about the Great Resignation. Those are huge. Anything people focus. So this goes again back to that caring about the whole person. And like you said, Maria, be not just inspiring, but also transforming the people that you're speaking to. So that extended, you're right. Like back in the day, it'd be like, okay, you can tell a story and that's great. And people will take from themselves. But in my coaching now, I'm like, okay, no, we need to make it obvious and clear what the takeaways are so that they know exactly how to apply that in their day-to-day. And so there is that transition there. Change management, obviously a huge one. The future of work, like where are we going, and the future of work in terms of people, but also just like the economy and where things are going. That is going to be huge for a while. And I think it's always kind of relevant, because we always want to know what's ahead. I'm trying to think of, anything to do with self-care. So like we said, mindfulness is huge right now. And, it's not just telling people like, hey, meditate. It's like really getting at them from the life's perspective of what they're dealing with, and then teaching them little tools and strategies they can use throughout. So that's a huge one. Self-care, anything in self-care, professional development, leadership development is huge right now, because leaders have transformed a ton. So they're, and their environments have completely transformed. So they're needing to be, more gritty and all of that. So, they're burnt out themselves. So dealing a lot with burnout and stress is a big one as well. And then diversity, equity, inclusion. That's a huge one that I touched on before. And that's just because that's the way the world is going right now. So those are some of the hot topics that I'm seeing. Yeah.
Interesting, actually, because you were talking about, so first of all, you were talking about takeaways, and it's so important that a speaker really articulates that well. And in fact, the better you can articulate your takeaway and your outcomes, the less fee negotiation there is, because people are happy to pay when they're clear on what that outcome is, right? The stronger the outcome, the higher the fee. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking about terminology. So I know that there's resistance to mindfulness and meditation as a topic. And I think often that's the solution that you use to get people to where you need to get them to the outcomes. But
Yes.
often it's not the topic you're going to be selling, is it? I don't know if you found that in your marketplace as well.
You're right. Like it is a bit of a tougher sell to sell a mindfulness speaker, because people are like, what, they're going to teach me to meditate? Like they just have that negative connotation. So, I know a really good mindful, she blew me away, Maria, because she does all of it. She has engagement, entertainment, and education throughout her talk, but she starts it with a story, and she changes it up, but she starts it with a story of how she lost her mother and how that created perspective in her life of how life is short, and we need to make sure that we're doing the things that make us happy and that actually make us fulfilled and help us in life. So, and then she goes, and one of my favorite things she shares is like this image of a dog and then an image of a person and the bubble above their head, and they're out on a walk and the person's like a billion things going on and the dog is like trees and grass, and she's like, who's more at peace? And I was like, the dog. So it's like, that was an eye-opener for me. So it's those little things, and then she tells other stories throughout, and gives us little tips and tools. So it's really interesting. Like it's actually quite fascinating. But yes, it is, she tailors it to mindfulness for dealing with a lot, or mindfulness for mental health, so she's kind of attaching other themes to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You're right. You can't just sell yourself as a mindfulness speaker. You need to kind of attach it,
Yeah.
mindfulness for leadership or something, like you just got to attach it to something else. Yeah.
It's the packaging, isn't it? It's the
It's the
packaging.
packaging. Yeah.
Now, what's sad is that what was missing, and I'm sure you've just missed it. It's not that it's not in demand, but the topic that we should have there is sort of environment, sustainability, climate. And I think you missed it. It's not that it's not there. I do think it needs to go. It does need to go higher up in the agenda with everybody. I feel. I do think we're getting distracted. We got distracted.
Yeah.
We're distracted with what's going on in Russia, and now it looks like we're going to be distracted by China. There always seems to be something that stops us moving forward with this agenda. Yeah, and I sincerely hope that every organization prioritizes it, and that speakers also prioritize it and make it part of whatever topic they're talking about, that they include it. What I love is all those topics that you cited. They're all similar this side of the pond as well. And I know that our listeners, our speakers listening who speak on those topics will be clapping, cheering, rubbing their hands together, thinking, great, I'm going to have lots of work this autumn. Yes, you are, absolutely. You've mentioned engagement, entertainment, and education a few times, and this is obviously must form part of your framework that you've also mentioned. Tell me a little bit about your keynote speaking framework.
Sure. Yeah. So I love this. I'm really proud of it because it's just everyone has their own version of it, like coaches and stuff, where they have their own version. So it's not like it's like completely different than others, but they just have ways of teaching it and things and words they use. But I took a look back at all the presentations, because I used to work for an agency before this, that I saw. And I was like, what was it that made them stand out? Like, what was it? And it was so interesting. It was a showcase we did once, and for our speakers when I worked at the agency. And out of all the ones who spoke, the one that got the most ratings was an entrepreneur who was just super funny and told his life story and his struggles from his own authentic perspective. And he got the most ratings. So it wasn't like he was sharing like crazy things, but I mean, he even like termed the entrepreneur pillow, which was hilarious. It's the one he cries into every night when he realized what he did.
I love that.
But that was funny because you know what a client did? They made pillows for all their people at the next conference. And so it became a whole thing. It was like, because it was an entrepreneur conference they booked him for from that, right? So it's like, it's memorable. It's that memorable piece, right? So my framework is the 3 E's of speaking: education, engagement, entertainment. And anything we do, we want to be educated. We need some kind of takeaway. We were talking about those tangible takeaways. We need engagement. We don't want to just a talking head. We want to people to engage with us. And then we want to be entertained. And that could be, people say to me, oh, well, I'm not a good joker. Like I'm not funny, you know? And I'm like, but it's more about natural humor in the moment that you can make fun of things. And like, you don't even it doesn't have to be humor. It could just be your style and your way of presenting. Like me, I'm entertaining because like I'm, high energy and I'm like talking with my hands and doing my thing and showing my passion. So that could be entertainment too. Some people are poets, some people are musicians. I'm working with a musician right now. So we're building in some songs into her talk to make it a full experience. And I had a realization the other day too, that this doesn't just apply to speaking, but think about any time that you go to a show or you go to anything. So I went to a postmodern jukebox. They're freaking amazing. Definitely highly recommend checking them out. They were so cool. And after their performance, I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. And they had education. They were teaching us about music in the 20s and 30s. They had engagement. They had an MC from their band that was engaging with us. They were doing skits. They were making it fun. And then obviously the entertainment was the musicians themselves. So it was like, it really does. It transpires in a few different areas, but it's really that whole piece of just like influencing and persuading others, right? And giving them something that's entertaining. So I say that is the framework. And then in the middle is that authenticity, vulnerability, and humanness. So that is kind of the framework that I use to help my speakers build their talks.
Love it. Love it. Love all that. And it's, if anybody who's watching the video will see this. Those who aren't and who are listening on the podcast, you've been waving your arms about in excitement while speaking. In fact, anybody would think you're Italian.
I do. I'm a hand talker. I know people have said that to me before.
Yeah, because they say, my background is Italian, and I try to keep still because my camera goes in and out of focus. And
I know.
they say, if you make an Italian sit on their hands, they can't speak anymore. That probably is the case for you. If we say sit on your hands, you'd be like,
yeah.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Do you think any cool opportunities have come about as a result of what we've been through in the pandemic for speaking?
Yeah. So the coolest thing that I love is I actually freaking love the in-person and virtual components because it provides more opportunity for speakers to do more. And what is really cool, so basically one of my speakers, she went out west. And she had to do 2 in-person engagements out there, all the way to BC. So like from Ontario to BC. In Canada, that's far. We're a big country. That is a good 6-hour flight. Like it's far. And it was like on an island, so it was even further. But at the same time, she was able to do 2 virtual engagements out of the house she was staying in. So that is the coolest thing I've seen. And then there's another engagement that she's doing in Kingston, Ontario, which is about 3 hours from here. And we have a hold now on that day where she's doing that talk, but we wouldn't have been able to do that before because there's no way she would have had time to make it home to her studio. But I was able to call the hotel and they actually gave me a room for free for her to use. They're like, oh yeah, she can just go in there and do it. Like, we'll just add it on. It's free. Don't worry. So now she has this room. If she doesn't want to use her hotel room, she might want to use just like a room. And she'll bring certain equipment, just simple things that she needs. But for virtual, you don't need slides. You don't need a projector. You just need your slides if you use slides. And you just need a good microphone. This is easy to bring with you. This is not the best.
Yeah, you're just for those on the podcast, Tami is raising her Yeti. I've got a Yeti podcast mic as well. And they're quite heavy, but I can stick mine in my handbag.
Yeah, exactly. You could totally stick it in your handbag. And then you just have a nicer camera on your computer and you're good to go, really. So it's like, doesn't actually take that much. And you just need a quiet space with a good Wi-Fi, right? So, and they promised me that the Wi-Fi in there is good. So, that is the coolest thing that's come. There's been a bunch, but that has probably been the coolest thing that has come out of, that. And also just like seeing all the cool tech and switching software and things that speakers have been able to use. I mean, basically, when you're someone that doesn't ever have to worry about the AV and then suddenly you have to, it's like you become the AV person. Some people have like gone all out, developed big studios, and some people keep it simple. I say it's based on the style, honestly, of the speaker. So like, for example, I've been finding that storyteller speakers do best without slides virtually. because you want to see that expression, you want to see that emotion, that passion, that, that they're giving, and they're this little tiny thing, in the corner with their slides. So, and some people have fancier stuff that they can show it at the same time. But, my point being is like, I've been finding storyteller types, they are better with just no slides virtually, but great, to have a few images in person. So, so it really depends, but yeah, that's been another cool thing that I've seen.
That is really cool. And actually, I think the other thing that's related to virtual that's really cool, which would never have happened if it was just in person, is that chat box. The ability for participants to chat with each other, ask questions of the speaker as well. And also, even if the speaker asks for some kind of information, you can go back afterwards and you've got all that incredible information. So you could have 1,000 people on that and they can all be chatting and communicating, which you can't do in an audience, because you'd be disturbing everybody. So I quite like that too. I've taken a lot of your time, and I've got probably one of the toughest questions for you to end on.
Ooh, okay.
Ooh, what do you think could be improved within the speaking industry going forward?
Okay. I know my answer to this because of the work that I do and how passionate I am. We need to pay female speakers, and we do. But women initiative events, unfortunately, I've seen a huge trend, at least in Canada for sure. And I'm sure it's the same I've seen it in the US, that unfortunately women initiative events, so women leadership events, women initiatives within large organizations, they don't pay. And I have a real issue with this, and I'm not to make them wrong. I just don't think it's right. You know what I mean? Because the way I see it is like, you're advocating for women, you're telling them to, to put themselves out there, to value themselves. But then you're giving them nothing, and you're saying, oh, well, it's a trade of, our network. Sure, some of these huge organizations, banks and, big groups and stuff, yeah, okay, they have these great followings, but we all know at the end of the day, money is the most valuable thing. We need money to live. You know what I mean? And yes, it may lead to other engagements. And I'm not saying that speakers should never do free events. I think especially in the beginning, it's good to just get practice, lower fees, all that stuff. But it does get to a point, and so what's happening is like, these conferences want these big professional speakers, and I'm talking professionals, not the ones that are executives that are just doing this as part of their job. I'm talking about like the types on the line today, Keynotes, the ones that are doing this as a profession, right? They want them, but then they ask them to do it for free, and it's frustrating because it's like they've worked really hard to not do stuff for free anymore, and their years of experience and all that. So that is something that I'm honest, and obviously more diversity, and that's starting to get better. So like I said, it's nice to see, more diverse and females coming to the industry. But yeah, this is something I'm actually going to write an article on it, because there's something that I just, and it's going to, because there are some great organizations that do pay their speakers. So I have two that I know of that are female run, types of events, businesses, and they use sponsors and community to pay their speakers. So, that's a really good way to go. But for some reason, and I don't know why, people don't think like that. Like, I talked to someone recently. Sorry, you fired me up on this one.
No, it's fine.
Talked to someone recently, and she got a whole bunch of sponsors for the event, and then she wanted the speaker to do it for free. And we actually declined. I said, no, I'm really sorry, but we just can't. And I hope you understand why. But I said, why don't you get a sponsor for the speaker? And she was like, oh, we can do that. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Sponsors freaking love it. They get a chance to literally engage with this thought leader ahead of time, maybe have a meet and greet with them, align themselves with this really cool person, doing this amazing work. And then the speaker kills it and the sponsor's attached to that. Hello. You know what I mean? And like book signings after, product, like you could do so many things. You can get so creative. And there are people that have the money to do this, and they want to be aligned with these things. So yeah, I really don't know why it happened. I say, like, when you go to a hairdresser, you're not going to ask them to cut your hair for free unless they're like really new, right? So
and then I wouldn't go near a hairdresser.
And then I probably wouldn't do it, right? Like
Exactly.
That just goes to another point of like, I wouldn't do it. But the reason that, like, and that's the difference in fees and stuff too, right? Is like the reason you pay for your junior hairstylist versus your senior, they could do much more, right? So like, I hope that, you know, through my advocacy and shedding light on this issue and others, that we can find a way to fund. And it's not just, and it goes to even a bigger issue, which I won't get into because it's irrelevant, but of women being still underpaid. And I saw an article recently in one of our major publications, and here in Canada is the CBC or something, Globe and Mail. And they were like, women are over mentored, underfunded. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what it is. And they were specifically talking about entrepreneurs like me that are looking for funding for our businesses. But it's so true. It's like, there's all this free mentorship opportunities, and that's amazing. I'm not complaining. I think it's wonderful. I think it's great these big organizations are aligning themselves with women, but it's not funded. And that's frustrating.
Wow, I triggered you there, didn't I? What everything you've said about sort of the women's events not being funded and not having budgets, it's exactly the same over here. And it's interesting because yeah, it is the same. I spoke to a speaker recently who had decided on a topic, and I said, well, who's gonna pay for it? And I said, oh, women's events. And I said, well, you do know that women's events don't pay. No. And so she's sort of thinking, oh no, so I think she's gonna work with me and find a way around that rather than going down that route. All of that I agree with. So for me, for the future of the speaking industry, I think there are a lot of people who enter the industry and don't have enough understanding of how important that external speaker is and what value they can bring. And what tends to happen, I've seen it, you know, when I was on the other side, when I was running my bureau, that often that role of researching the speaker is delegated down to somebody quite junior who has no understanding of, or hasn't been given the understanding, to be fair to them, of the overall strategy of the business, the overall objective of the actual event, and what they're trying to achieve. So all they've got is a budget. Get the cheapest speaker, and they're comparing, and it becomes transactional, and now the speakers are commoditized, and that's such a big mistake. You've got the opportunity to bring in some of the best brains on the planet, some of the greatest experts on the planet, some of the best storytellers, whatever it happens to be. So whoever you're delegating in that to, make sure they understand what they're trying to achieve. And in the same way, I've seen many bureau agents who have been thrown straight in without any training, without even knowing what Keynote means. You know, and it's like, so let's raise the standards everywhere, from, you know, the meetings professionals, the bureau agents, the internal professionals, whoever's involved in an event. That's very expensive, not only to put on the event, but to take all these people away from their jobs and to bring them into a room. It's one of the most expensive things you're going to do as a business. Why are you not treating that person who's going to have everybody's attention in a different way? And I've seen people budget for that speaker and spend less on that speaker that has got the attention of maybe 3,000 of their top people. They spend less on that than they do on the coffee break.
Oh my gosh, yes, Maria.
I'm starting you again, aren't I? I'm getting you started again.
Yeah, this might go on forever. No, but just to comment on that, you're right. Like one of my, you know, speakers, she says all the time, she's recognized an expert. She's like, people don't remember the swag bags that you put out. Like, and how much do you spend on? Like, you could easily spend an easy 2,500 easily on, or more, on swag, and people don't remember that. You know what I mean? So like, it's the AV, it's the food, and it's the entertainment. So, you know, thought leadership. So it's like, that's where you need to spend most of your money. Especially the food, especially if somebody has so many dietary restrictions, you know, but the food really does make or break. If it sucks, you're like, oh, the food sucked, you know, and if something goes wrong with the AV and it's like really bad, people remember that. If the speaker bombs and you're just like, who the heck was that? People are your reputation is on the line. So I agree. It's like spend reallocation to be able to afford the bigger, best thought leaders, like you said. I love that.
Absolutely. And in some cases, depending on where the event is, air conditioning.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
I've been to some
you're right.
events
The air
where I've,
conditioning does matter. Too cold or not enough.
yeah,
Yes.
precisely. I'm of that age. I need to be kept cool. Anyway, listen, Tami, thank you so much. I could talk to you forever. I feel like I
Same.
have a kindred spirit. I think we're on the same page.
Yay.
I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Oh, this has been so fun. Yeah, it's really exciting to just, yeah, talk to people about what's been going on, right? Like we don't get many opportunities to do that. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening to Speaking Business Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. In fact, I'm sure you have. Please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends and share it. And I will see you all next time. Thank you.